My parents' long-lost daughter, the one who was separated 17 years ago, finally came home. Mom held her whispering, "My precious, precious girl." But her eyes were fixed on me with a mask of innocence. She asked, "Now that I'm back, shouldn't my sister be going back to her own home?" She thought I was the cheat, the charity case adopted to claim the lavish life that was rightfully hers. What she didn't see was the deep silence that fell over the room the moment those words left her lip. She didn't realize that in this house, I wasn't the guest. I was the queen, and she had just tried to push me off my throne. She thought this was her story of a triumphant return, a princess reclaiming her castle. She had no idea she just walked into my story. And I don't take kindly to outsiders. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a bid for everything. And I've never lost. Jenna was my parents' biological daughter, separated and sent to some family in a poor rural town when she was little. She was only found today. I got home from baseball practice, and the second I walked through the door, I could hear muffled crying inside. My mom was clutching a girl, sobbing uncontrollably. My dad, a tough-as-nails guy who stands 6 feet 2 inches, was standing beside them with red-rimmed eyes. They were gone from dawn till dusk, barely saw their own child, and had no idea the nanny was part of a child relocation group. The girl was 4 when she was sent. They'd spent years searching with no luck. "Who's this?" A thin voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I looked up and saw her staring at me. I frowned instinctively. Her gaze made my skin chill. She flinched dramatically, burrowing deeper into my mom's arms. "Don't be scared," Mom cooed, patting her back. "This is your older sister." Then to me, "Chloe, this is your little sister, Jenna." "But I don't remember having a sister," she said, hesitating for a second before shooting a timid glance my way. Mom started. "Chloe is," I cut in with a smile. "I was adopted." "Oh, I see." Her voice faded. She mumbled to herself. "So, Mom and Dad already had another kid." Mom hugged her tighter, her heart clearly breaking. "Jenna, having a sister is a good thing. It just means one more person in this house to love you." Jenna's face fell, tears welling up. "I thought Mom and Dad would only love me. Why do you have to share my love with a sister?" Okay, now I was sure that chilling feeling wasn't my imagination. She was guarded. I could understand it. I guess she'd faced so much woe and finally came home only to find her parents had been raising another kid in luxury. It had to sting. I was about to try and explain. "Actually, Jenna," cut me off by bursting into loud sobs. "Maybe I shouldn't have come back. Am I just interrupting your happy family of 3? Dad panicked. "Jenna, what are you talking about? Your mother and I have been waiting for this day for years. We're overjoyed to have you home. Parent wants their child to suffer out there." Jenna looked at Dad, her eyes wide and helpless. "Really? Of course." That seemed to be the answer she wanted. Her tears stopped and a smile broke through. She threw her arms around Dad, resting her head on his shoulder like a dependent child. "Thank you, Daddy." My parents let out a collective sigh of relief. A second later, she spoke up so bold. "So, since I'm back, shouldn't my sister be going home now?" The air went still. The only sound was the soft, shallow breathing of people trying not to breathe. She looked at Mom, her eyes full of expectation. Mom flinched and looked away. Dad pretended to be fascinated by his cup of tea. She finally sensed something was wrong. Her expression turned to panic. "Dad, did I say something wrong?" But I saw it. A flash of deep bitterness in her eyes. It made me pause. Dad cleared his throat. "Having 2 daughters, think of the bragging rights. It looks good on me. Let's just keep things as they are." Mom chimed in. "Yes, you've just come back. If there's anything you don't understand, you can always ask Chloe for help." Jenna clearly hadn't expected to be ruled out so firmly. Her eyes started to me. I gave her a wide saccharine smile. "Sure thing." Then I grabbed my baseball bag and walked out the door. Behind me, I heard Mom's panicked voice. "Chloe, Chloe." I walked right next door, used my fingerprint to unlock the door, and went straight in. This is where my aunt and uncle lived. In reality, they're my biological parents. That's right. I was adopted by my mom's sister. So, when Jenna shot me that guarded look, I understood it. but I sure as heck wasn't going to feel like I owed her a single one. The truth is, it was my aunt who, after losing her daughter, had this epic romance, letting their only daughter take the mother's name. Even Jenna thought I was living her privileged life, enjoying the love and affection that should have been hers. But the truth is, I was always meant to be adored. Frankly, if I'd been raised by my biological parents, I'd be 1,000 times happier. I mean, I have the coolest, most in-love parents ever. A fearless CEO for an older brother, a brilliant hospital director for a second brother, and a wild, famous movie director for a third. My backup is stacked, and it's powerful. Thinking back to the bitterness in Jenna's eyes, I let out a soft breath. The coming days were not going to be peaceful. My new little cousin was a very tricky person, a bear in sheep's clothing. From my earliest memories, my real parents and brothers never once neglected me. When my aunt and uncle, the ones raising me, were busy with work, they took care of me, and they did a fantastic job. They told me over and over that even though I was adopted, I was always welcomed back home. They even had a room just for me, complete with my own study and a piano room. So, walking in now felt perfectly natural. I flopped onto the couch, grabbing the bowl of fruit the housekeeper had cut up for me, and started munching away. I heard frantic footsteps outside. My mom and dad, my adoptive parents, rushed in. Chloe, what's wrong? Mom saw me and let out a huge sigh of relief, cupping my face in her hands. Poor baby. You must feel so hurt. Jenna's just sensitive from being back. Don't be mad at her. I shot back. So, I'm just supposed to take her fuss. Dad looked shocked. What are you saying? We've watched you grow from a tiny thing into a young woman. You're our daughter. Who dares to disrespect you? Mom added, her voice pained. Chloe saying that is like breaking a glass in my heart. Fine, I said. But I'm not going back there to listen to her bitter remarks. I'm staying here for a few days. In perfect unison, they both said, no, you're coming back with us. I won't be able to rest easy. One on my left, one on my right. They half dragged, half escorted me back next door. They were terrified I'd stay with my real parents and never come back. Seemed they weren't completely under Jenna's spell yet. I caught the faint movement of a figure behind the curtains. I smiled. Jenna, this round goes to me. Honestly, I didn't have anything against Jenna at first. She was my parents' daughter, my cousin. I might be spoiled, but I'm fiercely protective of my own. When I first saw her, I felt a pang of pity. But her get out of my house act halted that pity instantly. If she didn't want to acknowledge me as her sister, I wasn't about to go chasing after her friendship. Back at the house, Jenna stopped provoking me to my face. Her little games continued behind my back. She'd make a big show of being affectionate with Mom right in front of me. And she'd use her meek little act to get friendly with the household staff. She was trying so hard to project this image of a harmless, gentle soul to highlight how different she was from me. I just watched, calm and detached. I didn't make a move. Only people starved for affection make such a big deal out of it. When you've grown up swimming in love like I have, you don't even notice the small stuff. You don't need to beg for it. You know you're loved unconditionally. So all her petty little maneuvers, I couldn't be bothered. Her tactics were amateur at best. Still, having someone constantly buzzing around you like an annoying fly is tiring. I called my oldest brother. The message was simple. Wire me money. I need retail therapy. His call came through instantly. I could hear the murmur of a meeting in the background. Chloe, what's wrong? Did someone upset you? I put on my best little sister pout. Yeah, Jenna's so annoying. She's always picking fights. He soothed me. Don't worry, your big brother has your back. As soon as I'm back from this business trip, we're officially transferring your records back to our family. I reassured him. Don't worry, bro. You think I'd let myself get bullied? After hanging up, a notification popped up on my phone. A $3 million deposit, the memo, pocket money. A huge grin spread across my face. I changed my clothes, ready to hit the mall. As I came downstairs, I heard cheerful chatter from the living room. I saw Jenna nestled up to Mom, both of them all smiles. When she noticed me, she looked up and shot me a triumphant, challenging glare. I just smirked. She really thinks that would make me jealous. As I walked past the sofa, Mom saw I was heading out and immediately pulled out her phone. Chloe, don't hold back when you're shopping. Mom's sending you some money. I just grunted. Uh-huh. And had the satisfaction of watching Jenna's face darken. In her mind, all this money was hers. It shouldn't be wasted on an outsider like me. It's kind of amusing, like having a little wind-up toy that changes expressions on command. Suddenly, she spoke up. Can I go shopping, Mom? I've never been to a mall. Mom hesitated for a second, looking at me. Jenna immediately put on her droopy puppy face. I just want to see what it's like. I won't buy anything expensive. Mom's heart melted. Of course, you can go, Chloe. Why don't you take Jenna with you? I raised an eyebrow. I have my own plans. Mom sighed. Then I'll take her. Jenna, go get ready. I watched as Jenna practically skipped upstairs. 10 minutes later, she was back wearing a simple dress that looked a little worn. It was a calculated move to make herself look even more like the victim. We headed out to the driveway. I had my own car, a gift from my brothers for my 18th birthday. Mom had her own, too. Jenna stood there expecting to sit next to Mom in her car. I gave them a cool glance, then walked over to a Maserati, started it up, and pulled out. As I drove past them, I saw the look of pure envy and regret on Jenna's face. I slowly curved my lips into a smile. The mall was the kind of place that could swallow you whole if you let it. 3 floors of glass and marble and designer storefronts, everything glittering under lights that never told you what time it was. I knew every corner of it. My brothers had brought me here since I was old enough to walk in heels. I parked in the VIP section and didn't wait for anyone. I had a mission. When the world gets loud and complicated, retail therapy is a sacred ritual, and I take it seriously. 3 hours and 6 shopping bags later, I was sitting at the cafe on the 2nd floor when I spotted them. Mom and Jenna, 2 tables away, hadn't seen me yet. Jenna was leaning forward, elbows on the table, speaking in that soft, breathless voice she used when she wanted to seem fragile. I slipped in my earbuds. I didn't play music. Don't understand why she gets to act like that. Jenna was saying she walked right past me like I didn't exist. Mom, I'm your real daughter. Doesn't that mean something? Mom reached across and squeezed her hand. Of course it does, baby. Then why does she get a Maserati and I get nothing? She's not even. Jenna stopped herself, took a breath, repositioned the fragile look on her face. I just feel like a stranger in my own home. I watched my mom's face go soft, guilty, and aching. And I felt something sharp in my chest. Not hurt, not quite. Something colder than that. She's good, I thought. I'll give her that. But good isn't the same as smart. I stood up, gathered my bags, and walked over to their table with the unhurried ease of someone who owned the floor beneath her feet. Jenna looked up, and something flickered in her eyes before the mask snapped back into place. Chloe, Mom said, surprised. Saw you guys from across the way. I pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. Having fun? Jenna looked at my 6 bags. Her jaw barely moved, but I noticed. Looks like you had a productive afternoon. I set the bags down and flagged a waiter. The usual, please. They already knew my order. Jenna watched the exchange with a kind of quiet calculation that didn't match the sweet lost girl she was playing. I filed that away. Jenna was telling me she'd love to learn how to drive, Mom said a little too brightly. She was always bad at hiding her attempts to broker her peace. I could teach you, I said easily. I'm a good driver. Jenna blinked. She hadn't expected that. Really? Sure. You'd have to keep up though. I don't do slow. Mom looked relieved. Jenna looked like she was trying to figure out whether I was being kind or threatening. The answer, for what it's worth, was neither. I was being strategic. If she was going to be in my orbit, I'd rather have her where I could see her. The days that followed were a masterclass in watching someone unravel their own plans. Jenna had a system. I could see the architecture of it clearly by the 3rd day. Step 1, win over the staff. She spent her mornings floating through the kitchen, asking the housekeeper questions about the family, what we liked, what we didn't, little details she could use later. She was sweet to the driver. She asked the gardener about his family. It wasn't warmth, it was intelligence gathering. Step 2. Isolate me from my parents. She orchestrated small moments, casually suggesting family activities at times. She knew I'd have baseball practice, asking Dad for help with things when I was in the room, so his attention pivoted away from me. Setting up private conversations with Mom that always ended just as I walked in, making me feel like I'd interrupted something precious. Step 3. Rewrite the narrative. She'd taken to calling me her older sister around the staff in a tone that carried just the slightest hint of pity, like she was being generous by claiming me, like I should be grateful. I let her run the system. I watched every move. I didn't tip my hand. There's a kind of patience that looks like weakness to the wrong kind of person. Jenna thought my stillness was surrender. She thought my silence meant I had nothing. She was reading my lack of retaliation as confirmation that she was winning. That was her first real mistake. The shift came on day 5. I came home from practice to find the living room subtly, deliberately rearranged. The family photos on the mantel had been reorganized. The one of me at 12, the year I won the regional championship, the one Dad used to point out to every guest who walked through the door, had been pushed to the side. In its place was a new frame, a printed photograph of Jenna and my parents taken earlier that day in the garden. It was a beautiful photo. I stood there for a long moment, that bag on my shoulder, looking at it. Then I set my bag down, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and drank it standing at the sink. Dad came in a few minutes later and stopped when he saw my expression. "Chloe, nice photo," I said. He looked at the mantel. Something crossed his face fast and guilty. "Your mom wanted." "It's just she said Jenna needed to feel like she belonged." "She does belong," I said. "So do I." He didn't have an answer for that. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking for the right words and not finding them. That night, I FaceTimed my second brother, the hospital director. He answered in his white coat mid-hallway, clearly between rounds. "You're quiet," he said immediately. He always knew. "I'm thinking about what? How long does it take to figure out who someone really is?" He didn't answer right away. "Then depends on how badly they're trying to hide it." "What happened?" "Nothing yet." I paused. She moved my photo. Silence on the line. Then my brother's voice, calm and precise, the voice he used right before making a decision. "Send me a photo of what it looks like now." I did. He stared at it. "Okay, I'll be there this weekend." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." The warmth in his voice was quiet and absolute. "That's not why I'm coming." After we hung up, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. I wasn't afraid. I want to be clear about that. I didn't have the luxury of fear because I was too busy thinking, because here's what Jenna didn't understand about moving that photograph. She didn't hurt me. She showed me her hand. She showed me what her endgame looked like. Not the fragile version she performed for my parents, but the real one. The one that erases me from the walls of my own home. She wanted the whole story. All of it. The house, the parents, the name, the legacy. She wanted to hollow me out and take the shape of what was left. Every move she'd made in 5 days had been working toward that single goal. The thing about being a strategist is that you don't react to the move that just happened. You react to the move 3 turns ahead. And I could see exactly where she was going. The real question was whether she knew where I was taking her. I already knew the answer. She had no idea. That Friday, she made her biggest play yet. And I'll admit, I didn't see it coming. I'm honest, even when it's about my own blind spots. I was in the study when I heard voices downstairs, raised ones. I recognized my mom's tone, that particular pitch she reached when she was scared. I set down my book. By the time I reached the top of the stairs, I could see Jenna in the entryway below, standing with red, rimmed eyes and a phone in her outstretched hand. On the screen was a photo of me with my real family. "Who are these people?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling with perfect, practiced precision. "Why does she have a whole other family, Mom? Why didn't you tell me?" The floor seemed to tilt slightly under my feet. She'd done her research. My mom looked up and found me standing at the top of the stairs. Her eyes were wide and helpless and sorry. Jenna followed her gaze, and when she looked at me, through all the performance, through every layer of the act, there was something raw underneath. Not grief, not confusion, victory. She thought she'd just won. I walked down the stairs slowly, one hand trailing the banister, unhurried, like I was simply coming down for a glass of water. Let her think that, because the thing about being 3 moves ahead is that the moment your opponent thinks they've won is exactly when you start to move. I walked down those stairs like I had all the time in the world, because I did. When I reached the bottom, I looked at the phone in Jenna's hand. The photo was from my youngest brother's movie premiere 2 years ago. The whole family dressed up, laughing, my real mom with her arm around me. It was a good photo. I'd always liked it. Those are my parents and brothers, I said simply. They live next door. Jenna's face arranged itself into something wounded. Next door? So, you have a whole family right there and you've been living here taking up space. That Jenna. My mom's voice was quiet, but firm. It surprised us both. Jenna pivoted instantly, tears filling her eyes on command. I'm just confused, Mom. I don't understand the situation. The situation, I said, is exactly what it looks like. I was adopted by your parents. My biological family lives next door. Both families love me. That's it. There's no conspiracy. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Because you didn't ask. I turned to my mom. I'm going to bed. I have practice at 6 o'clock. I went upstairs. Behind me, I could hear Jenna's voice shifting registers, pouring on the sweetness again, rebuilding whatever she thought she'd broken. I didn't look back. In my room, I sat at the edge of my bed and allowed myself exactly 3 minutes to feel whatever I was feeling. That's a technique my oldest brother taught me. You don't suppress things, you schedule them. 3 minutes. Then I opened my laptop and started working. My second brother arrived Saturday morning. I heard the front door, heard my dad's voice go warm and surprised in that way it always did when one of them showed up unannounced. I was downstairs before he'd even taken off his coat. He is built like someone assembled him for the specific purpose of being intimidating. Tall, broad-shouldered with the calm, deliberate manner of a man who makes life or death decisions before breakfast. He looked around the living room, registered the new photo on the mantel. The rearranged furniture, the small alterations that had accumulated over a week, and his expression didn't change at all. That was how I knew he'd already cataloged everything. There she is, he said, and pulled me into a hug that made the past week feel temporarily manageable. You didn't have to come, I murmured. I know. He sat me back and looked at my face with that clinical precision. You sleeping? Enough. That means no. He wasn't wrong. Jenna appeared at the top of the stairs a few minutes later. She'd clearly taken time getting ready. Her hair was neat, her expression calibrated to just the right amount of shy curiosity. She came down slowly like she wasn't sure she was welcome in her own home, which was the performance she'd been perfecting all week. Oh, she said softly. I didn't know we had a guest. This is Chloe's brother, my mom said. He's family. Something moved across Jenna's face too fast for anyone who wasn't already watching to catch it. I caught it. My brother looked at her with the same expression he used on interns who thought they could bluff him. Open, patient, measuring, Jenna, he said. I've heard a lot about you. She gave him her best watery smile. Good things, I hope. Interesting things, he said pleasantly. She didn't know what to do with that. Neither did she get the chance to figure it out because he turned back to me and said, Show me around. It's been a while. We walked the property together. He didn't speak for the first few minutes. Just looked. The garden, the guest wing, the relocated photo, the small markers of Jenna's systematic occupation. I walked beside him and let him process. Finally, he said, How long has she been running this? Since day one. She's methodical. He nodded slowly. She's scared. I looked at him. She doesn't act scared. That's because she's covering it with aggression. She came home expecting to step into something that was waiting for her. Instead, she found you established, loved, completely at ease. That wasn't in her plan. He paused. She's not trying to destroy you, Chloe. She's trying to survive. She just picked the wrong way to do it. I turned this over in my mind. It didn't make me feel more sympathetic toward her. But it made me understand her better, and understanding is always more useful than sympathy. What would you do? I asked. He smiled. That particular smile my brothers reserved for moments when I asked the right question. I'd let her keep swinging, he said. Every move she makes is information, and eventually she'll overextend. She already showed me the photo. That's not overextension. That's probing. She's still feeling out your defenses. He stopped walking and looked at me directly. She's going to make a move on your position. Something public. Something that makes it hard for your parents to walk back. I felt the certainty of it settle into place. Yeah, I said. I know. Are you ready for it? I've been ready since the day she walked in. He studied me for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a business card. I turned it over. An attorney's name, someone I didn't recognize. Family legal counsel, he said. Your adoption paperwork. The property deeds, the trust documents, all of it is bulletproof. I had them reviewed this week just to be sure. He paused. She can't touch your actual position. What she can do is make your parents feel guilty enough to hand things over voluntarily. That was the part that had been sitting quietly at the back of my mind all week. Not the legal standing, the emotional leverage. You can have every right to something and still be pressured into surrendering it. So, what's the play? I asked. He looked toward the house. We let her show who she is. Not to us. We already know. To them. That evening, I went next door and had dinner with my real family. My real mom had made too much food, as she always did. My movie director brother was on a video call through half the meal, being dramatic about a location dispute in Morocco. My real dad kept refilling my glass without being asked. It was loud and warm and slightly chaotic and completely absolutely home. When I came back, the house was quiet. My parents were already upstairs. I stood in the living room for a moment, looking at the mantel. The photo of 12-year-old me was still pushed to the side. Jenna's photo still held the center. I looked at it for a long time. And here's the thing I understood. Standing there in the dark. This moment, this exact moment, was the reason she'd underestimated me from the start. She looked at me and saw a girl who needed to fight for her place, who would panic when threatened, who would come apart when the ground shifted beneath her. She thought I was like her. But I had never once in my entire life needed to fight for my place. My place had never been in question. Not by my real parents, not by my brothers, not by the aunt and uncle who raised me, and who had held on to me tighter than I sometimes knew what to do with. I thought about what she'd said the day she arrived. Her eyes full of expectation, her voice pitched to land exactly right. Now that I'm back, shouldn't my sister be going back to her own home? She'd been so certain that sentence would work. That one question asked in front of my heartbroken parents would be enough to unravel 18 years. She didn't understand that I wasn't here because I had nowhere else to go. I was here because I chose to be. And that was the thing she could never take from me. Not with a rearranged photo, not with a planted phone screen, not with all the careful, patient strategies she'd been running all week. She'd walked in on day one and tried to kick me off my throne. What she hadn't figured out yet was that the throne was mine because I'd never needed it. And that was exactly what was going to destroy her. The dinner was my mother's idea, a welcome home celebration for Jenna. Saturday evening, extended family, the good china. My mom announced it over breakfast on Tuesday with that particular brightness she gets when she's trying to force a good outcome through sheer force of optimism. Jenna's eyes lit up. Mine stayed perfectly still because I knew the way you know when a storm is coming not from the clouds, but from the way the air sits differently against your skin. That this was the moment she'd been building toward. All the staff reconnaissance, all the private conversations with Mom, all the careful image management. She'd been waiting for an audience and my mother had just handed her one. I excused myself from the table, went next door and told my brother. He was quiet for a moment. Then, how many people? Extended family? Maybe 15, 20. People who know you since I was a baby. He leaned back in his chair with the particular stillness he had when he was satisfied. Then you don't have to do anything. I know, I said. But I'd rather do something. He smiled. What do you need? What I needed was information. The housekeeper's name was Mrs. Delgado. She had worked for my parents for 11 years, and she had been the one to teach me how to make a rose con leche when I was 9 years old because I'd cried about not knowing how, and she decided that was unacceptable. She had attended every one of my baseball games that she could get to. She kept a photo of me on her phone. Jenna had spent a week being sweet to her. I caught Mrs. Delgado in the kitchen Wednesday morning and asked her directly, "What's she been asking you?" Mrs. Delgado set down her knife and looked at me with an expression I knew well. The one that meant she'd been waiting to be asked. She wanted to know about the family finances. She said, "Who controls what? Whether your name is on any of the accounts, whether your parents ever talked about sending you back." I absorbed this, and I told her I don't discuss family business. She picked up her knife again. Then she asked me to make sure you didn't have a seat at the head table Saturday. The audacity was almost impressive. She's going to try to embarrass me at dinner. I said she's going to try. Mrs. Delgado's voice was dry as paper. I've been working for this family since before she went missing. She's been here 9 days. I reached over and squeezed her hand once. She nodded and went back to chopping. By Friday, I had a complete picture through Mrs. Delgado and the driver. A quiet man named Orlando, who'd taught me to parallel park and had apparently been entirely unimpressed by Jenna's attempt to charm him. I knew the shape of what she'd planned. She was going to position herself as the center of the evening. She'd arranged with my mom to give a short speech welcoming the family. She'd asked to have the photos of just our family, the 4 of us, displayed around the room, framing the narrative of reunion. She'd requested that I be seated at the far end of the table away from my parents near the cousins I was least close to. And she'd apparently told 2 of my aunts, reached out to them directly, which was bold that she was still adjusting and found it a little overwhelming that I had another whole family right next door, and she just wanted everyone to feel like one unit. She was preceding sympathy, getting people emotionally prepared to take her side before they'd even walk through the door. I had to admit it was sophisticated. For someone who had supposedly been in a rural town her whole life, she had a remarkably refined understanding of how social dynamics worked, which told me something important about her I filed away for later. I spent Friday evening next door at my real family's house. I helped my mom cook. I sat with my movie director brother while he complained about Morocco. I let myself be completely fully present, replenishing. Then I went home, slept 8 hours, and got up Saturday with the clarity of someone who had already won and was simply going through the motions of the finale. The family arrived the way they always did, in waves, too loud, bringing dishes nobody asked for, filling the house with noise and warmth that Jenna clearly had not anticipated. These were people who had known me since I was a toddler, who had clapped at my games and teased me about boys and slipped me money on my birthdays and called me by a nickname Jenna had never heard. She stood beside my parents in the entryway, smiling, her careful smile, and received their greetings. They were warm to her. Of course, they were. She was the miracle child who returned, and everyone loves a reunion story. But then they turned to me and 15 years of real relationship flooded the room. My Aunt Patricia grabbed my face in both hands. "Look at you. You look tired. Are you sleeping? Someone get this girl a plate." My Uncle Hector pulled me into a bear hug and muttered that he'd heard I'd been tearing up the batting averages, as if this was a personal achievement of his. My cousin Daniela linked her arm through mine immediately and didn't let go for the next 20 minutes. Jenna watched all of it, I saw from the corner of my eye. Her smile stayed in place, but something underneath it shifted. She'd prepared for a room she could manage. She hadn't accounted for a room that already had a history without her. I made my way through it all naturally without performance. That was the thing she'd never be able to replicate. I wasn't working for this warmth. It existed independent of anything I did tonight. Dinner was served. I was seated at the far end as she'd arranged. I sat down without comment next to Daniela and my Uncle Hector, which was exactly where I'd have chosen to sit on my own. Jenna delivered her speech. It was genuinely moving. She talked about the years of uncertainty, the feeling of finally coming home, her gratitude for parents who never stopped looking. There wasn't a dry eye at the table. She was talented. I kept acknowledging that to myself because underestimating your opponent is the oldest mistake in the book. My mother was crying. My father had his jaw set in that way he did when he was fighting not to. And then Jenna did it. The overextension my brother had promised. She raised her glass and said with a smile that managed to encompass both generosity and subtle authority, And I'd like to especially thank my parents for keeping this family together, for making space for everyone, no matter what the situation. This is their home and their legacy. And I'm so glad to finally be here to share it with them. Their home, their legacy. The emphasis was light. Most people at the table probably didn't catch it, but every person in that room who had known me for more than a week heard what she didn't say. I watched my Aunt Patricia's eyes go still. I watched Orlando, the driver, standing near the kitchen doorway, look down at the floor. I watched my Uncle Hector set his fork down very deliberately and glance at my father. And I watched my father's face. He was looking at Jenna with an expression that had changed. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else would notice. But I had been studying my dad's face for 18 years, and I could read every frequency of it. He was uncomfortable. Not because of what she said, but because of what he heard in it. Because somewhere under all the love and the guilt and the joy of having his daughter back, a signal had just gone off that he didn't have words for yet. I reached for my glass and took a sip of water. Here's the thing about watching someone overextend. You don't correct them. You don't call it out. You let the moment exist in the room, and you let the room process it, and you let the truth surface on its own, because truth, when it is real, does not need you to carry it. I looked up and found Jenna looking at me from across the table. Her eyes were waiting for a reaction, a flinch, a crack. I gave her a small, genuine smile. Her expression didn't change, but her hand tightened almost imperceptibly around the stem of her glass. I noticed because I was looking for exactly that. There it was, the first fracture. After dinner, I was in the kitchen helping Mrs. Delgado with the dishes when my dad came in. He stood in the doorway for a moment, then came over and stood beside me at the sink. He didn't say anything right away. He picked up a dish and a towel and started drying. We worked in silence for a minute. Then he said quietly, "You okay?" "I'm good, Dad." Another pause. She didn't mean anything by it. What she said. I handed him a glass. "I know." He dried it, set it down. "You're my daughter, Chloe. That's not a temporary arrangement. You understand that?" I looked at him. His jaw was still set. His eyes were a little red. "I know," I said again, and I meant it differently this time. He nodded once, put the towel down, and went back to the dining room. I stood at the sink for a moment, the warm water still running over my hands. 18 years versus 9 days. She had run a perfect campaign. She had executed it carefully, methodically, without a single obvious mistake. And she had still lost because she fundamentally misread what she was up against. She thought she was fighting for a position. She thought if she worked hard enough, she could displace me. She didn't understand that I wasn't a position. I was a relationship, 18 years of one, and you cannot scheme your way into the space that kind of thing occupies. Tomorrow she would realize she'd already lost, and she would make one more move. I was already ready for it. Sunday morning, the house was quiet. I was at the kitchen table with coffee and my phone when Jenna came downstairs. She was dressed and composed, but something was different. The careful softness she'd worn like a costume all week was fraying at the edges. She looked like someone who had lain awake running numbers and finally accepted they didn't add up. She sat down across from me. I waited. "I want to talk," she said. "Okay, not like this." She glanced toward the hallway without them. I set my phone down. "They're right upstairs." "I know." She looked at me directly, and for the first time since she'd walked through the front door, she dropped the act entirely. No trembling lip, no wide-wounded eyes, just her looking at me with something cold and exhausted and honest. "I need you to leave." "No, I'm not asking." "I know you're not." I kept my voice level. "The answer is still no." Her composure cracked. Not all at once. In pieces, like ice under weight. "You don't belong here. You have parents next door. You have brothers. You have everything. This is the only thing I have. Why won't you just let me have it?" Something moved in my chest. Not softness, recognition. "You could have had it," I said quietly. "You could have come home and gained a sister and 2 parents who would have given you anything you asked for. That was available to you on day 1. I didn't want a sister. I wanted my family back." "I know." I looked at her. "But I'm not the reason you lost them, Jenna. You were 4 years old. That wasn't my fault. And it wasn't yours either." She went very still. What happened to you is horrible. I said, I mean that. And you deserve to come home to people who love you unconditionally. You still do. But you decided in the first 5 minutes that I was the enemy. And you've been running a campaign against me ever since. And the only person it's hurt is you. Her jaw tightened. You don't know what it was like. No, I don't. I didn't look away. But I know what it looks like when someone is so scared of losing something that they start destroying it before anyone else can. The silence that followed was different from the others. It had weight. I heard footsteps on the stairs. My parents appeared in the kitchen doorway together. My dad with his coffee. My mom already reading something on her phone. They stopped when they saw us. Jenna turned to face them. And I watched her prepare to perform. Watched her reach for the soft, trembling voice and the wounded eyes. It didn't come. Whatever the last 5 minutes had done to her architecture, the performance mechanism was offline. She sat there with her real face showing. The tired, frightened, furious, lost face of a girl who had survived something terrible and come home only to find the world had kept moving without her. My mom set down her phone very slowly. My dad put his coffee on the counter. They looked at Jenna the way you look at something you've been afraid to see clearly and finally do. My mom sat down beside her. She didn't say anything clever or careful. She just took Jenna's hand in both of hers and held it. Baby, she said. You don't have to fight. Jenna broke completely and without warning. Not the practiced tears, but the real thing. The kind that comes from somewhere too deep to perform. She bent forward and cried the way I suspected she hadn't let herself cry in a very long time. My dad stood with his hand on her shoulder, his red-rimmed eyes back. I stood up quietly, picked up my coffee, and walked to the back door. Outside, the morning was cool and bright. I could hear faintly the sound of my real parents' house coming awake next door. The smell of coffee through an open window. My brother's voice low and unhurried. I stood there for a while, breathing the morning air. Here is what I know. Some people come into your life swinging because it's the only way they know how to survive. Jenna had spent 17 years in a world where softness got you nothing and every resource had to be taken or defended. She came home and saw me and her instincts told her I was a threat. She wasn't entirely wrong to be afraid. She was just entirely wrong about who I was. The war she declared never needed to happen. But it happened and she lost. Not because I outmaneuvered her, though I did. She lost because the thing she was fighting to destroy was never destroyable. Love that's 18 years deep doesn't move for a 9-day strategy. You can't scheme your way into a family. You can only show up honestly and let them choose you. She almost missed her chance. I heard the back door open behind me. My mom stepped out. She stood beside me shoulder to shoulder looking at the garden. After a moment, she said she asked me to tell you she's sorry. I turned that over. Is she? I think she's starting to be. I nodded. Chloe. My mom's voice was quiet and certain. You know this doesn't change anything. I looked at her. 18 years of her face. Every game she'd attended, every late night. Every time she'd held my face in her hands and called me her poor baby, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I know, I said. And I did. That's the thing nobody tells you about being unshakable. It isn't armor. It's just knowing deep down in a place that doesn't need defending that you are loved. Really loved. Not because of what you provide or what position you hold or what story someone needs you to fit. Just loved exactly as you are with no conditions attached. Jenna had been fighting for something I'd had the whole time without even thinking about it. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost.